What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to the Locks DFS Cash Locks video for this Week 7 of the 2019 NFL season. I am super excited. I am Christian Hardy, at ByHardy on Twitter. You can follow me there. I am ByHardy on DraftKings. We are going to be going over my favorite plays for Week 7. If you followed us for Week 6, you probably did pretty well. I, unfortunately, and we're going to start this with a lineup review in a second, did not follow everything that I said. Still ended up with a cash last week. But before we get into anything for this week, before I go over my lineup, before I go over my favorite plays for this week, I wanted to take a second. Be sure to comment on this video. Comment with your favorite cash play of the week. Comment with if you're a GPP player, who's your most chalkiest player that you're playing in terms of your lineup builds. Who you're playing the most. Give me your favorite play, guy that you are locking in as much as you can this week. And if you do that, you have a chance to win a free season pass from LocksDFS.com. Be sure to also like and hit subscribe. Those all help us out so much. We really appreciate you coming back, and like to do a giveaway every single Monday, so come back on that video. Sorry, every single Thursday night video, which will come out on Wednesday. So be sure to come back on that and check out and see if you won on those Thursday night videos. With that said, let's go ahead and look at my lineup from last week, which is right here. This is in the 153 entry tournament. Really made some big mistakes last week, and I won't go too deep into them, and instead go a little bit into my thought process. Going into the week, I think I didn't spend enough time trying to build with other running backs. I pretty much was pretty set on Zeke and McCaffrey. I definitely got a little bit unlucky with David Johnson, who was very, very chalky, as you can see, 42%. If I knew David Johnson was going to be that chalky, I would have had a much different opinion on him. I really thought I was going to be getting Johnson a little bit lower ownership. That was very insane for me to see. No regrets in terms of Zeke and McCaffrey. Obviously, the Cowboys game script didn't go great for Zeke. He ended up getting in the end zone. He's just not involved in the passing game as much as I like to see him so far this year. Just watching as a Cowboys fan, he's just not getting a lot of checkdowns that could be there for Dak. That's really hurting his DFS value, and we saw that last week as the Cowboys trailed the entire game, and Dak just didn't look to him. Okay, went with Kyler Murray, got the rushing touchdown, but obviously I talked about Deshaun Watson in my video last week. Loved Deshaun Watson last week. Didn't jam him in. My mistake. That's my first mistake I made right there. Not finding a way to get him in. Just, not good. Not sharp. Murray was a fine play, fine process, but obviously the result was pretty much the nut low. At least Murray did end up getting me 25. The rushing touchdown was sick. But didn't break 100 rushing yards, didn't break 300 passing yards, didn't have any passing touchdowns. Cardinals kicked like 3 field goals, 4 field goals, something like that. So that was unfortunate. Obviously unfortunate for not only him, but I have Larry Fitzgerald, I have David Johnson, who could have caught one of those touchdowns. David Johnson missed a few goal line opportunities last week. It is what it is. Luckily, I got some run good in rostering Will Fuller across the board. Obviously, a lot of people did as well. I'm not going to really tout Will Fuller. He was a really, really good play at 4,500. He was an A on the lock sheet. So, obviously, I think I'm not going to, I'm not going to sit here and tout someone who was pretty obvious as a cash play. I don't really want to toot my own horn in that one. It was shocking to me, though, that Christian McCaffrey was 28.5% owned last week. I thought he was a very, very clear play, pretty matchup proof. I was very shocked by that. His ownership in cash, pretty much across the board. But anyway, Tate, obviously another very chalky play. Probably not optimal to have him in this tournament, which I am showing you a tournament right now. But obviously, it was always going to be my cash lineup, as I talked about in the video. Ended up on Noah Fant and a cheap defense. That pretty much just allowed me to go with these 3 running backs builds. I wish I would have kind of looked around at other running backs. It also allowed me to play Noah Fant, but there wasn't anyone that that David Johnson was affecting too much in terms of my tight end decision. I was pretty much planning on punting tight end all week. I don't really have that option this week. So hopefully that is enough to kind of talk about some of my process last week. Like I said, Cardinals didn't really work out, and that hurt me. And obviously I didn't have all the guys who went off. I touted Michael Thomas in the video. Didn't end up jamming him in. Didn't jam in Deshaun Watson. I pretty much jammed in those 3, and I'm in great shape. Obviously McCaffrey is like implied in that. So those 4, I guess. And I'm in very good shape, so it does hurt, to tout those 2 guys that went off, but, it is what it is. Let's move on to the next week, Week 7, which is a really interesting week, and I think this is actually going to be, I said that last week that my video was going to be long. This is actually going to be probably a little bit longer because there are so many injuries. I'm not going to talk about the injuries per se in this video, but I'm mostly just going to, real quick, run them down. We'll be talking about these guys in Slack on the morning of. We'll be talking about them live stream before lock as well. 30 minutes before lock will be in there for the members, so There are just a ton of guys that are going to change not only Sunday morning but also Sunday afternoon. As I read this list, there are just a lot of guys that are going to be in those afternoon games, and it's going to affect kind of decisions on those games. There are a total of 4 afternoon games. Obviously, it's only a 6-game slate. It's almost half the games. We've got injuries in Arizona. We've got injuries in LA. We've got a few Jets notes. So, okay, injuries, questionables. Alvin Kamara, David Johnson is a big one. Obviously, Chase Edmonds becomes the best play on the slate, just better than Malcolm Brown, but clearly the best play on the slate. Callum Balaj popped up on the injury report on Friday. Not really looking too much to those Miami Dolphins, but it would be a little bit interesting if Kenyon Drake was to get pretty much all the carries in a home matchup against Case Keenum. He's only 4,400 at running back. Tyreek Hill obviously is questionable. We don't know much about his status. I think he's leaning towards playing. Marquise Brown, is questionable as well. I am expecting him to play. Christian Kirk is questionable as well. I'm expecting him to play. Damiere Byrd is questionable. Not as important as Kirk's injury is, but he is certainly worth looking at. And then on the tight end, there's a few more. Kenny Stills is in there, but at the tight end we have Mark Andrews gonna play, practice fully on Friday, and then you have George Kittle. I mean, these guys are all so important to the slate. They can really, really change the slate, the composure, the composition of lineup builds, especially with that late salary that I'll have left. I think Kittle is very interesting because he got added to the injury report on Friday in a game where San Francisco is going to have to throw the ball a lot. We could be looking at some of these receivers if we see Kittle. I'm not going to really get too far into these injuries. Like I said, I'm going to operate as if most of these guys are playing. I don't want to really deviate from that. So if you do want these updated takes, you're going to have to be in the member chat on Sunday morning. A lot of people were talking about it on Twitter. I'll probably be talking about it on Twitter a little bit as well. So, okay, let's go ahead and get into the plays now. I'm sorry it took so long to get here, but here we are. Okay. Deshaun Watson is my favorite quarterback again this week. I know I said it last week. He's still my favorite this week. It's the highest total game of the week. The Houston Texans are slight underdogs, and they have a 25.5 team total currently. Consistently, I am concerned with Watson's offensive line. But this is a spot for Kansas City where they're missing a few defensive linemen. I don't think they're going to be able to create a ton of pressure, and I think Watson's pretty much going to carve up these cornerbacks, do whatever he wants to do with them. I feel really good about Deshaun Watson this week. Of course, we've got the rushing upside, as we always have. We saw that big, probably to a greater extent last week. He didn't get the touchdown, but he did get the rushing yards. He's always got upside to rush. That's pretty much with all, that's the theme with these top price running backs. As you can see, it's starting to get that's kind of, I don't know, we're seeing a lot more of that than we've seen in past years in terms of rushing. Mahomes done a lot of it, but Lamar Jackson runs a lot. Russell Wilson is rushing more this year. Kyler Murray rushed 9 times last week for almost 100 yards. Dak Prescott has some rushing upside. I mean, that's just kind of where it's going. It raises the floor, raises the upside. It's pretty clear. It's a very clear-cut thing in college football as well. But even when you get a little bit on these NFL slates, is big. So yeah, I mean, I just love Watson. I think they're a slight dog, and that's just a spot that we like to play quarterbacks in, especially when they're high totals. Other quarterbacks, I'm pretty much going to be sticking between these 5: Mahomes, Jackson, Watson, Murray, Ryan. I think the 3 that I'm really deciding on are going to be Murray, Ryan, and Watson. Those are just the 2 highest team totals of the week. Two highest game totals of the week is Mahomes and Watson, Murray, Ryan. And then you have Lamar Jackson. You've just got a bunch of guys who run, like I said. It's just kind of the trend at the top here. So other than Ryan, all these guys are running, and Ryan is in a massive pace-up game. And we'll get to that a little bit as we talk about some Atlanta guys. But, yeah, so I just think your quarterback pool should be pretty condensed this week. Okay, let's move on to running back. Obviously, one of the top plays at running back is going to be way down here, Malcolm Brown. I don't think I'm going to talk about it too much, but I mean, just very, very briefly, Todd Gurley is doubtful, probably not going to play in this game. Brown should get nearly all of the rushing work. Malcolm Brown has played pretty much all of the Rams' backup snaps so far this season. He should be the feature back here in this game against the 49ers. Obviously, we're looking at a tough matchup as the 49ers are only giving up 3.8 yards per carry. They are 7th in defensive line yards given up. That is a stat from Football Outsider. Shout out to them. Like I said, Brown's going to be playing majority of the snaps. 49ers and Rams are both top 5 in situation neutral pace of play, as I believe I have pulled up here. Yeah, they're both top 5. Yeah, I mean, a home favorite, pace up game. Brown has 3 targets this year. He's not going to get very much involved in the pass. I think they're going to want to use their running backs in passing work. I think it's going to be a lot of Darrell Henderson, who is a risky GBP play. I would say we don't really know what his role is going to be. This is just a spot where he's just so cheap. So let's go ahead and move on from that. If we don't see Alvin Kamara or David Johnson ruled out, Brown is a lock. If we were to see David Johnson ruled out, Edmonds would become my running back one, or like he wouldn't become my running back one, but in terms of locks, he would be my top guy on point per dollar. Then Brown would probably be after that. But I don't think I'm going to be in a situation where I'm playing more than one of those guys, and that is because I love so many of these mid-range running backs this week. Really, really in love with these guys in the middle here. It was tough for me to cut it down to even these two guys because there are, I think Dalvin Cook could go overlooked. I mean, we a lot of people will think about Dalvin Cook's matchup and kind of run away, but I don't think that is something you want to do. He touches the ball so much. He has a receiving role. I'm not really going to talk about him too much because he's not my play. My play, first play is going to be Le'Veon Bell. He's coming in very, very chalky. I did not think he was going to end up being that chalky because we're seeing the Jets as big underdogs. However, Le'Veon Bell has played 100% of the snaps twice this year. You're getting a guy who is pretty much going to play all of the snaps, and he's only 6,400. Not only that, he has touched the ball over 30 times twice in the last 4 games. Dallas has struggled to keep running backs in check and keep them in check in the rushing and the passing game. Le'Veon Bell, he leads all running backs with a weighted opportunity rating with 8 targets per game. Excuse me. I'm kind of going through my notes there. Like I said, should be one of the chalkiest running backs in the slate. He is also cheap on FanDuel, has one of the highest floors. He has massive ceiling because of that passing upside. There's also a little bit of hype around the Jets and Sam Darnold. I don't really fully not fully on board with it, to be honest with you, but I will say the Jets definitely get a big bump in every aspect of the game with Sam Darnold on the field. So that is just going to help this team. They're coming home. We're seeing 74% of the bets on the Cowboys at -7, but the line is still moved towards the Jets with less of the bets, which generally identifies sharp action, at least to some extent. Definitely going to want some of these Jets pieces because they are so cheap. Obviously, Jamison Crowder is at 4K. That is a big one as well. Robbie Anderson for a more of a risky play. Jamison Crowder. I mean, even Demaryius Thomas is 3.3K, and he led the team in snaps last week. So probably going to end up playing one of these Jets. It's Le'Veon Bell's probably my favorite there. I'm not sure if I want to get more than one or not. I do think those prices are nice on the Jets. Kind of see where that lands on Sunday morning. Okay, other running back to talk about really quickly is going to be Chris Carson at 6K. Cleveland giving up 4.72 line yards. Seattle is a slight favorite, but they are going on the road to Cleveland for a noon game, which is a little bit concerning. However, Rashad Penny questionable, which means Carson should be locked up for about 80% of the snaps, I would guess. At least 70% of the snaps. He saw a season high in snap percentage. He had 28 touches in the last game, so I'm expecting Seattle to control this game. I'm surprised that Cleveland is this close. I guess maybe if you believe that Cleveland could get their passing game going, they can maybe hang in this game with Seattle. But I was surprised to see that the line is only 1. I tend to believe that they will control this game. Seattle I think Seattle's a contender in the NFC right now with the way Russell Wilson is playing, and I just think this line seems off to me. And if that's going to happen, I think that Seattle will run the ball all over Cleveland, and that's what they want to do in general if they can control the game. So he's just too cheap. If we see Penny out, he's been pretty cheap all year. He has a little bit of a passing upside, not too much, but okay. There are some other running backs, but we'll get to those on the sheet and in the Slack. Okay, DeAndre Hopkins is my favorite wide receiver. He also, like Le'Veon Bell, appears to be the chalkiest player on the slate so far from 2 ownership projections I have seen. The Texans are going to throw a ton in this game. I mean, that should be pretty obvious. Kansas City is running at a top 5 pace. Houston running at a top 10 pace. And Hopkins leads the Texans in targets. Hopefully, and this is this is another narrative I've heard a lot this week, and a lot of optimism that maybe Will Fuller going off last week can possibly improve Hopkins' status. Prove Hopkins' situation here, because we've seen a lot of double coverages, even triple coverages, go towards DeAndre Hopkins. After Will Fuller goes off last week, I don't know if you're going to be able to continue to do that. So Hopkins is in a really, really good spot to bust out here, and he's only 7.4K. He is in pretty much the best matchup you can imagine for a wide receiver. We've had 4 down games. He's priced all the way down to 7.4. I would love it if he was a little bit cheaper based on his production, but he's not. I think it is a very, very smash spot. We smashed with Will Fuller last week, and I think this is a week that I will be going with Hopkins. Obviously, Fuller's interesting in GBPs, but he is way priced up at 66,000. Okay. I do think that Julio Jones is absolutely in play as well. Clear potential for a breakout spot here against Arizona. I mean, like I said, with Hopkins, really good spot, pretty much one of the best you can get. I mean, Jones is in the second best spot you can get, I think, in daily fantasy for a wide receiver right now because of the pace up, because Arizona will push you. They're going to push you. I think the offense is starting to figure out a little bit with Arizona as much as the defense is struggling. As long as you can keep Kyler Murray upright, he is going to find a way to move the offense down the field, and he's going to find a way to keep this team in games because he is good. So, yeah, it really just comes down to the offense for Arizona. Can they push the ball down the field, or are they going to run these little bubble screens and bullshit that they've been doing early in the year? I think if they put the ball in Murray's hands, let him throw it downfield, I think they're going to be very successful against this Atlanta defense. Okay. And that will, in turn, help Julio Jones. Okay, let's move down at wide receiver. There are a ton of guys in here that I'm going to skip over, and I'm just going to skip over them. I will mention Larry Fitzgerald on FanDuel. I don't gear this video towards FanDuel, but I am aware of his price. I think I believe it's $5,800 on FanDuel. Yeah, just play him. Like, just play him, and move on from that. So, I mean, when you see a guy cheaper on FanDuel than he's on DraftKings, oftentimes it is just play him. Yeah. So, okay, moving on. I am interested in, I think Calvin Ridley is interesting, by the way, as a GBP play. Shark is interesting. Okay, speaking of Shark, by the way, D.D. Westbrook. Jaguars are favored with 22.75 team total. Westbrook is leading the team in targets, and the line is moving their way with 29% of bets. They actually are favored now. This is another team that I think I just want a piece of, and I'm kind of that way with, with the Jets because of their prices. I'm kind of here with Jacksonville because I like both of these wide receivers. Shark is top. I believe he's 6th in air yards right now. He is traveling a pretty tough matchup with Matt Lattimore, but man, he looks legit. He looks like a very, very good receiver this year. Gardner Minshew takes care of the ball. Regardless, I think that Jacksonville will try to get the ball in the air a decent amount in this game. And they might have to because New Orleans offense looks pretty good with Teddy Bridgewater. So, I like Westbrook mostly because I think that they will need to keep it underneath a little bit in this game. And I also think that they will find a lot of success underneath because Shark is going to be lined up with Marshawn Lattimore, whereas D.D. Westbrook, who plays 80% of his snaps in the slot, is going to be matched up with P.J. Williams, which is one of the best matchups you can get in football. Obviously, we've seen Cooper Kupp go for 5 receptions, 120 yards, Lockett, 11 receptions, 154 yards, and Chris Godwin go for 7, 125, and 2 touchdowns. So, this is pretty much the best matchup you can get for a slot receiver. D.D. Westbrook has seen his increase in production over the last few weeks, over the last 3 weeks specifically, 9, 6, and 11 targets. Obviously, the peak coming last week against Carolina, and now gets a perfect matchup with P.J. Williams. So he's really, really interesting as a cash play to me. I'm not sure how chalky he's going to be. I think that people prefer him to Shark because they prefer to wear a condom. But DJ Shark is a little bit more interesting and fun. But that said, I think I'm leaning towards Westbrook and cash. He obviously has a much better matchup, and I do think Marshawn Lattimore isn't just all of a sudden bad this year. So Westbrook definitely makes a lot of sense. I don't want to insult anyone that is choosing the condom route here. Talked about Jamison Crowder a little bit already, but I mean, I'll get into it a little bit more here. I mean, it is slightly concerning to me with Crowder that he played 54% of the snaps last week when Demaryius Thomas returned. Demaryius Thomas led the team in snaps. I haven't heard a lot about what they're going to do here. So while I like Crowder, I think that the Cowboys will create pressure, and I think Sam Darnold will have to use a lot of these short targets to his slot receiver and Jamison Crowder and to Le'Veon Bell. I am a little bit concerned about his snap share, and if we don't see Emmanuel Sanders out, I don't think that Jamison Crowder is someone that I'll feel extremely comfortable with in my lineup because I do know that he's only played 50% of the snaps last week. So, okay. And only got 3 targets last week when we saw Thomas return. Okay. I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for wide receivers. I feel like I kept it pretty tight this week, but let's go ahead and move on to tight end real quick. Okay. So, we're going to talk about the chalk guy at tight end. I'm sorry if you don't want to hear it, but it is going to be Austin Hooper at 5K. Tight end to me is a position that pretty much plays out a lot like quarterback where I'm just looking at the guys at the top here. With Malcolm Brown in the mix, it allows you to pay up for one of these guys, at least to a guy like Austin Hooper, but even potentially to a guy like Travis Kelce, who is due for some massive regression. But let's talk about Hooper first. Obviously, I've talked about tight end production against the Cardinals this year several times. I mean, they've been dominated by the Lions. They've been dominated by T.J. Hawkins and Will Dissly. Mark Andrews got him for like 2 touchdowns. Greg Olsen got him for 2 touchdowns. I mean, the flow chart doesn't work for this team. DJ Swearinger doesn't work. I believe DJ Swearinger is actually out of this game. So his backup can't be better and just sitting on the bench. So Hooper definitely has a great matchup here. In terms of weighted opportunity rating, guys like Ertz and Kelce have been a little bit better. Hooper only has 5 targets inside the red zone, which is 1 a week. But the price has risen, obviously, but he's still pretty affordable here. And, it's a pace up against Arizona. Like I said, Arizona's playing at the second highest situation neutral pace in the league. So Atlanta should get plenty of plays off here. Atlanta is going to be in the red zone a decent amount here. I see no reason to really shy away from this chalk. Like, he's not like Tyler Eifert where he's not going to play snaps or anything. Actually, speaking of that, let's go look at how many snaps he's been playing really quickly. I actually didn't pull that up before the video. Yeah. I mean, dude's playing 80% of the snaps. Like, I just don't think there's a very valid reason to fade him in cash. I just kind of think you're probably thinking pretty hard doing that. But that said, I think that Kelce is definitely due for some positive regression. 7 red zone targets, no touchdowns, highest team total of the week. Leads all tight ends in air yards. Obviously, Mark Andrews becomes a little bit more interesting. I think he's going to be fine. He's going to play for sure. What's more questionable is if Marquise Brown is going to play. So if Marquise Brown is out, I have a little more interest in Mark Andrews, and you do get that $200 discount. Maybe you can use that somewhere. And lastly, even Zach Ertz, his price keeps dropping. Minnesota's been beaten up by a few tight ends this year. He's another guy. He has 7 red zone targets, but he only has 1 touchdown. He's also due for a little bit of positive regression in terms of touchdown. But Minnesota, they're running pretty slow. You're playing Minnesota, you're gonna need a pace down spot. That definitely hurts Ertz. Whereas Kelce is facing a top 10 team in pace. Kittle is facing, if he is in, which he did get banged up on Friday. He's facing a top team in pace. Top team in pace in Cincinnati. People forget that with Lamar Jackson. So yeah, I mean, I think all those guys are in play. Like I said, like quarterback, just keeping it at the top here. There's no one down here that I feel comfortable with. I'm not even going to mention one. Usually I throw at least one guy out here. I don't even want to throw one out this week. And maybe it's the vomit in my mouth still from Noah Fant last week in my cash lineup. But there's just nothing down here that is interesting to me. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for me. Obviously, there are some interesting defenses that I'm going to be talking about on the lock sheet and in chat. Usually tend to give out my cash defense in there. So yeah, all right. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this video, please hit the like button. Please leave a comment with your favorite cash play of the week. Of course, like I said, that will enter you to win a free season pass from Locks DFS. We give that away every single Thursday night video, so be sure to come back for that. If you do comment, if you do enter, I really do appreciate it. It helps out a lot, and we'd like to give back to you guys. Be sure to check us out, locksdfs.com. Check out our passes if you're here at the end. We appreciate that as well. And be sure to follow me, @ByHardy on Twitter, where I will be tweeting about college football, NFL, NBA. It's been NBA preseason has been awesome. So, all right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys back here next time. Peace.